Hey, Garland Nixon here with Larry C. Johnson. And my gosh, this Ukraine situation and NATO and the EU is an absolute mess. But I guess it gives guys like us something to talk about. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here with Larry Johnson. And Larry, your website's what? Sonar21, right?
Sonar21.com. That's it.
All right. So you can go there and check out all of Larry's good works. And who knows what's going on with YouTube. You know, I did a video yesterday with Scott and Andre. Get up this morning, the video's gone. And YouTube sends me something that says, it's been, we removed this video due to violation of community guidelines. But they said, and read our community guidelines to make sure that you never violate them again. And I'm like, but you didn't tell me how I violated them this time. I'm like, what? But, you know, it is what it is. That's the nature of YouTube. It's there arbitrarily. I guess we pissed off somebody in NATO.
Yeah, well, they've banned me. So I've got a back channel onto YouTube, but I also do BitChute.
Oh yeah.
I'm friends with Jeffrey Warnick, who's the owner of BitChute.
Uh-huh.
So if you need to get hooked up with him, I can connect you.
Okay, I'm on BitChute, I'm Rumble and Rockfin, so I'm stumbling forward. Let's talk about this. You know, I was just shaking my head earlier. I was listening to Alexander McCourse. I was out running around, and he was talking about this mineral deal. We're going to talk about Tulsi Gabbard and calling out CNN and stuff like that. But real quick, before we do that, and I looked at it, and it's like Trump, the mineral deal said something like, it started off saying, we get everything they have, up to $500 billion, which is quite a. Then it changed to, we get half of every dime the country makes with everything, but it didn't have an end. So I guess that's forever. We just get half of it. They do all the work, and we do all. And I just looked at it and I thought, perhaps the Ukrainians. You know, here's what I thought. A guy goes into a bar, young guy, he meets a beautiful girl, and his buddy says, "Let me tell you something." Well, her last boyfriend, the last three boyfriends. One of them, she took him to the cleaners. She got a bunch of credit cards, got $300,000 in his name, kicked him to the side. The next one, she took an insurance company took an insurance a policy out and pushed him off a cliff. Right? They go one after the other. She took everyone to the cleaners. Right? And I'm like, they haven't heard of Saddam Hussein. They haven't heard of Diem in Vietnam. They haven't heard of, you know what I mean? It's like perhaps the Ukrainians should have looked at the history of what the United States does with its puppets before they became a puppet. And now they're like, hey, we're no longer needed anymore. I think they're going to screw us over. Perhaps there's a historical context they could have looked at to figure that this was inevitable. And the same with the Europeans. They're going to get the same. Your thoughts, Larry?
Yeah, no, listen, the United States is a predator. We, you know, in your law enforcement career, you dealt with career criminals, guys that were, they weren't reformable. They were just irredeemably corrupt, and they were gonna scam somebody, rip somebody off, or prey upon the weak. That's the United States. So, you know, we just, you know, I hate to say that about our country, but you know, the truth is what the truth is. You couldn't, you know, if I was talking with Professor Syed Mohammed Marandi earlier today, and you know, I've made the point. I said, if I was ever in a position to advise the Russians, the Iranians, or the Chinese, they don't believe a damn word the United States says, because we're always looking to figure. You know, it's like the story they tell of those two Hollywood agents sitting at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and they watch this beautiful starlet walk by, and one agent says to the other, "I'd like to screw her," and the other agent says, "Out of what?"
Right, exactly. Exactly. And you know, the Europeans are sitting there, and they're I mean, here's the bottom line. The Europeans are playing, oh, we want to go to war. I tell you what it looks like to me. The lion comes in and kills the antelope. The hyenas are right behind, waiting for when the lion gets his fill, they're going to get some. The buzzards are behind that. You know what I mean? Everybody's waiting to feed off the carcass. Now that the Europeans have figured out that Ukraine is a carcass, everybody's going to be, and ultimately Hungary, Poland, the countries in Roma, whoever around are going to say, well, when you guys, everybody else gets finished taking whatever, we're going to come in and carve it up. We've got a historical land grab and rights to this portion. Ukraine put themselves in a position to be a puppet. And now all of the various predators, the scavengers, and everybody are going to come in and feed off the carcass. And you know what? I don't know what they thought was ever going to happen, but that's all going to happen. What do you think about that, Larry?
I've had personal experience with that. My neighbor across the street shot a wild pig in his backyard. Now, he lives right next to a lake. We're here in Florida. He was trying to figure out what to do with that pig. Well, Mother Nature had the solution. So the first one were the two alligators that crawled out and fed off the pig carcass. Then you had the buzzard show up and finish it off. Then a coyote showed up to roll around on what was left of the skin. Europe is like the ants, okay? Europe is irrelevant. They bring nothing to the table other than malevolence and a desire to meddle in things that's none of their damn business. And the good news is that they huff and puff a lot. They think they're the big bad wolf, but they couldn't even blow down a house of straw. UK's got an army of maybe 70,000 guys, and they can't even get them out. Germany can't even arm its army properly. I mean, it is a hot mess, and yet they want to be taken like they're serious people. They're a joke, and I think the only response we have is just to laugh at them and just not take them seriously.
I think right now what's happening is the Trump administration they see this thing, all of this stuff as economic advantage. Where can they make a dollar? Where can they, take economic advantage? They're looking at the Russians saying, you know what, the Russians got a lot to offer. They got oil, they got gas, they got something to offer. Let's get some I don't think they care that much about Ukraine. They're like, yeah, take what you want. Let's talk about some exploration in the Arctic, whatever we could make a dollar off of, right?
Yeah.
They want a deal. And ultimately, Europe ain't on a deal, because I think in the end, for all of the bluster that Trump or whoever he sends, he may not even waste his time. He may send Witkoff or somebody, and they'll say to the Europeans, we got a deal. And you're going to not only take the deal, you're going to be enthusiastic about the deal. Otherwise, we'll cut off your LNG. We'll cut off everything. We'll cut off your testicles. We will cut off everything. You'll either take the deal or you'll shut up. And you know what? They're going to have to take the deal.
Yeah. Yeah. This is, I don't know if you caught any of Trump's comments with Keir Starmer today. It looks like Trump's insecurities took over. And as long as, Starmer brought a big bottle of butter to rub on his rear end, and Donald loved that a lot. And one of the questions that was asked, you called Zelensky a dictator, and Trump said, "I never said that. When did I say that?" Yeah, and it's like, I mean, and so that sort of proves the point I made yesterday talking with Danny Davis, is that Trump, whatever Trump says in public, it's just words. It's like hot air escaping from a balloon. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. Let's watch what he actually does. Does he sign this deal with Zelensky, or does he toss Zelensky out? Does he suck up to Zelensky tomorrow in public? Let's watch what he does. You remember 3 weeks ago that Gaza, the Hamas was ordered, you have those hostages released by Saturday, or there's going to be hell to pay. Well, Saturday came, Hamas released 4 hostages, as they had agreed to under the negotiations headed up by Witkoff. And, there was no hell to pay from Donald Trump. So, he runs his mouth. And there's just because he runs the mouth doesn't mean there's a lot of action coming out of it.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I watch these people and they're like, "Oh, did you see what Trump put on Truth Social yesterday?" And I'm like, I don't even want to know.
Yeah.
But he said this, and that means that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, it doesn't mean anything. It means that at the time he blurted out what he was thinking, or he wants people to jump around over here so he can be doing the keep you busy. He throws out a trail of breadcrumbs and you go chasing after, oh, he said this and that. And then he goes on and does what he's going to do. Unless he's put his name on it, unless he's made an agreement, unless he's finally done it, it don't matter because Trump just says things that's coming across. And anyway, let's move on. A couple of things I wanted to ask you about. It seems to me that the arrest of the Romanian candidate, in a way, it's almost like, this is the way I read it. J.D. Vance came over and really humiliated the Europeans, which they desperately deserved to be humiliated
they asked for
what
it.
they were doing.
Yeah.
And this is like a way for them to give Trump the finger. Almost like said, oh yeah, because our guys specifically pointed to Romania, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll show you we're not listening to you. We'll arrest that son of a gun. It comes across like that to me.
Yeah. Well, these guys are experts at shooting themselves in the foot. They're angry that J.D. Vance would somehow suggest they're not democratic. Well, by God, we're going to show you. We're going to lock up the opposition candidate. And Vance is going, thank you, God. They just proved my point. I mean, it's ridiculous. So they're just making the guy more popular. When he first started running, he had like 5% of the vote, was polling at 5%. Now the dude, just out of principle, people that had opposed him initially are coming out, you know what? We're siding with him. He's our guy because he's, making these bureaucrats angry. And there's always this underdog theme is rising up. He's like the Rocky of Romanian politics.
Yeah, and to me, all they're going to do is like destabilize Romania. I don't see how they think that they can lock this guy up and they can say, okay, he can't run when he's got like 60-some%, and that they're just going to slip somebody in there, and that everything that the people are going to go home. This country's going to come unglued, and they just can't help themselves because, in my opinion, the EU is a fascist organization. It's fascist. Oh, yeah. I mean, pure totalitarian fascist.
Well, I did a thought experiment the other day. I've been on RT several times. I've been to Moscow twice in the last year. And I said, you know what? I can go outside the Kremlin, there in Red Square. I can get on my knees and I can pray, whether out loud or quietly. And what's going to happen to me is nothing. I can go into London, to Parliament, outside Parliament, and get down and pray, and they'll be asked, what are you praying about? And if I give the wrong answer, they arrest me. That has happened over there. And they want to talk about Putin's a dictator. Oh my, I mean, the hypocrisy across the board on this just stinks. Europe has eliminated, and I think they're a complete joke. I always describe them. It's an insult to Chihuahuas to compare them to a Chihuahua, but they are, because Chihuahuas can be pretty nasty little dogs. The meaner they are, the longer they live. That's sort of the character that Europe's in. What does it bring to the table? No resources. Yeah, it had a great history, but a lot of that history was built on the backs of enslaving foreign people. I mean, go throughout Europe, all they did was go to Africa and carve it up. And now, finally, in this 21st century, with the help of the Russians and Chinese, a lot of those African states are waking up saying to the French, to the United States, to the Brits, to the Germans, get the hell out, go home.
Yeah. So, let me ask you this. Let's jump on the subject of the day, something that you know about. Tulsi Gabbard, let me bring it right here. Okay. Newly confirmed U.S. Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard has accused CNN of acting as a propaganda arm for disloyal intelligence agents. Now, when I read that, I automatically think to myself, she knows more than she's letting on. If she says they're a propaganda arm, now they say it's part of, apparently some CNN citing unnamed sources claim that some senior CIA officers were quietly discussing how the dismissals, quote, risk creating a group of disgruntled former employees who might be motivated to take what they know of a foreign intelligence service, which of course would be a crime, highly punishable. But my point is, I think she knows that the CIA and these agents aren't just hasn't been just working with the CIA and MSNBC, that they are integrated. I believe they are integrated with these media outlets, and not just them, with the Post, with the New. They are actually like mechanically integrated with them, so that they've been for years. Okay, here's a story: the Russians have hacked into a electric plant in New Hampshire, which they literally put out. Here's a story: the Russians might have hacked into this. Here's a story: this blah blah blah. That they were like literally connected as a group.
Yeah, well, so when I was there, so it was the fall of November of '85. I did like an 8-week internship on the Afghan task force, which was on their Directorate of Operations side. And I was involved with putting together covert action. These are information operations where we were creating stories to plant in foreign media. It wasn't until I think around 2001, 2002, that CIA started using USAID for a lot of that information operation. And from 2001 on, it exploded, to the point that we just learned, thanks to Elon Musk, that USAID was spending $140 million a month on information influence operations in Ukraine. In other words, yeah. A lot of money to buy up a lot of people that go out and lie on your behalf. So, it's really sort of funny that these officers said, "Oh, yeah, we're so disgruntled with Trump, we're going to go sell our secrets to the Chinese or the Russians." If I'm a Chinese or Russian intelligence officer, I don't want the damn freak show coming to me. I mean, they realize these people, when you read the articles about these sex chats that were underway at NSA and CIA, I don't know if you saw that.
No, tell it for those of our listeners that may not know about that. Fill them in on that story.
There's a great article out by Chris Rufo. You can just look up Rufo, RUFO. But they set up these groups, and so the transgender groups got to be very active, and then they started spending most of the workday on these chat groups, and they were discussing their multiple sexual partners. They were discussing cutting off their genitalia. That on taxpayer dollar. That's what they were doing. And Tulsi said she saw that and she goes, "Oh, no. This coming to an end. This is going to stop, and they're going to fire some people." Because candidly, I don't see how you could allow somebody who's transgender to have a security clearance, because they've already established that they have problems dealing with scientific reality. And people say, "Well, that's hate speech." Well, no, I'm entitled to voice an opinion based upon biological science. And people that want to deny that, fine, deny that. But we also don't want to hire people into the intelligence community that, hey, the earth is flat and it's not a globe, it's flat. And I insist that it's flat. And if you don't like it, you're because I've run into those kinds of people too. I got a nephew who's in that category. And so there's no amount of reasoning with it. So this is the intelligence community needs a big old, house cleaning.
Yeah, it's you look at it, and then when you look at it, like this hypersexualized atmosphere that was rising. Look, I don't think that the intelligence people, like a bunch of young guys, should be on there saying, I went to a bar and I met 3 girls and I had a tryst with all 3 of them at the same time. I don't think you should be on there writing that.
Yeah, that shouldn't be going on either.
Yeah. Right. So all of this stuff together, I don't see how you can have competent intelligence people if they think that their sexual exploits are something that they should be a discussion on government time. And when you look at US, there's an alignment here. You look at this USAID and it's like, what's going on? Well, they spent X amount of $1 million in Guatemala or whatever the hell country for a transgender play or for a gender studies play or some, again, hypersexualized stuff. And you're like, first of all, I don't know what we're spending all of this undercover money in like Guatemala for. That we shouldn't be doing that when we got people here who can't eat or whatever. You know what I mean? Everything's falling apart. But my point is, it's all sexualized. What are we trying to spread the hell to Guatemala? Sexualized bullcrap. It seems to me that like these people had these fetishes and things like that, and they were just taking taxpayer dollars, whatever you want to call them, taxpayer, whatever. They were taking government money and using them to like explore their fetishes and to spread whatever fetish they had around the world. It's really sick.
Well, yeah. In fact, I can actually use some real names now because the 2 gentlemen I'm going to talk about are deceased. This just didn't start yesterday, and I'd argue that part of the problem within the intelligence community has been, let's call it, a lack of integrity and accountability. So if you get in one generation, so there was this legendary CIA officer, Dewey Claridge. He was involved with the Contras, first set up the Counterterrorism Center, first director of that. Well, I know the guy who was was the senior officer in charge for the CIA down in Miami at the time. One of his jobs every time Dewey came to town was to set up a safe house with hookers. Okay, so that officers know that, and so it filters down, and so eventually it comes in that you get then they cross the line and say, hey, homosexuality is okay. And so, now you've gone from heterosexual infidelity, then into homosexual infidelity. Then you actually had there was some CIA officer. One guy got indicted for raping all of these foreign women. So it's just,
then you have the sex trafficking, the child. It goes into whatever some twisted mind decides they want to do. And they're like, well, I'm in this intelligence. Nobody can touch me.
Right. Because, well, we're working on national security, so we don't have to worry about morality. And it does. The intelligence business can push you and compromise you in a number of ways. I mean, I've got a friend who was he was a bishop in the Mormon Church, and he was running Iranian assets. And one of these Iranian assets, his dream was to sleep with 2 hookers in Las Vegas. So they flew him out on the FBI director's plane. And then here's my buddy, this Mormon bishop, walking around, the streets of Las Vegas trying to line up 2 hookers for his contact. So you get all of a sudden you end up degrading yourself, and things that you would never accept or approve with your kids doing, or and all of a sudden you're out there facilitating that kind of activity. So it's a bit of a slippery slope. And, people say, Johnson, you're just being naive. But I'm thinking, well, the whole honor and integrity part of it, the key to really good intelligence work is not that you're going to be a lying, untrustworthy person that nobody can count on.
Let me ask you this. One of the things that I've been saying for the last several years, I don't watch the crap, but people turn on and people are like, oh, yeah, I watch MSNBC. And I'm like, you watch these various so-called news shows. You got a former CIA director, a former FBI director, former DOJ guy, former, NSA guy, and you think they're telling you the truth. Mm-hmm. My thought is these are people who still have their security clearances, who still have access to all kinds of crap, just like the 51 intelligence agencies that basically, agents, they're still a part of that machine where somebody in the agency, somebody in the intelligence community still utilizes them. Hey, man, here's what I need you to do. Oh, you're going on tomorrow night. Here's what we're working on. Hey, let me see. Even, let's say I still got my security clearance and somebody calls me up. Hey, I just want to slip you some information. You know, the Russians did this. Now he could be lying to me. And the Iranians did this and so did this. And I go on the air. I'm going to show how much, well, you know, I have it in good confidence that the Russians, the Iranians, the Chinese, the Venusians did blah, 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 blah. So they're still either wittingly or unwittingly, they're operatives for the machine.
Yeah. No, it's a very alluring lifestyle. And then when you add into it, you look at how wealthy people have come by playing this game. It really started in the 1990s, and one of my first boss or second boss in the Middle America Caribbean division, he retired he left the CIA, when as early as he could, set up a consulting business, got hired back by the CIA, and he got hired by the CIA to do what actually CIA employees should have been doing, but weren't. Only the CIA paid him 3 to 4 times what they would have paid somebody if they'd hired him internally. So the whole contracting business that took off in the 1990s. Because if you're there in DC, you got to drive out to Northern Virginia, get off on the GW Parkway and head outside the Beltway or to Georgetown Pike and look at all the McMansions and all, there's a lot of money out there. And it's just like, where did this come from? And it's become a very wealthy area because of all of these, I'll call them what they are, government leeches. They're leeching off the government, and the taxpayers paying the bill.
Yeah, that big money. Look, here's a story real quick. 2006, an organization that I was involved with had their major donors, and I sat at the major donors table, talked to a guy for a while, and the guy said, Garland, you ever think about running for office? I said, not really. He says, let me write down a number. Here's my name and number. Give me a call. I'm selling my core company right now, and I'll give you his name because this guy is deceased. He says, give me a call. We can talk. I can help you. And I'm like, wow, that guy wants me to run for office. I didn't think anything of it. So later on, I'm talking to the head of this organization, and they say, I told him what happened. They said, you know who that guy is? I said, no, his name was Lynn Moodispaul, right? Yeah, Lynn Moodispaul. I said, she says, well, he just sold his company, Essex Corporation, for $587 million to Northrop Grumman. He does these. And when you look it up, he has all of these. It was a cybersecurity firm. And he has all of these contracts, right? If you go online, and so I went online and looked it up, and it was like Operation Blue Heron, CIA, 221 million. Operation so-and-so, NSA, 62 million. So basically he had these gigantic, so he opens this cybersecurity firm. Come to find out what he does is, and he'd had that one for 13 years. He opens these cybersecurity firms, builds them up, builds them up by getting gigantic government contracts. Then when it gets so big, he sells it. And he uses the fact that he has contracts. You want to buy that? I got $800 million worth of contracts. I sell you for $500 million. You got to guarantee $300 million, right? And I come to find out, and they do that. Then he goes back out and starts another one. And when he starts it, he buys up a bunch of firms, brings them together, turns it over, and you realize. And I thought, he wanted me to run for office so he could own himself, whatever he wanted me to run for, congressman, whatever he wanted me to run. And when people like that say they want you to run, that means they go to like the state Democratic Party and say, this is my guy. How much do I have to pay to make him number one? You know what I mean? If he wanted me to be in Congress, I'd be in Congress. This guy was a billionaire. When he went to the state Democratic Party in Maryland and said, Garland's my guy, we got an open spot. He probably already had a spot. He was angling for somebody to put in. I want him in. Garland, go do whatever your little things you want to do. Every now and then, I'm going to give you a call. And I'm going to say, this bill right here. I'm just hoping you could help me out on it. You know what I mean? You know the game.
Yeah.
But I realized, holy crap, they're just turning these things over, and not for like 100,000 or 200,000, hundreds of millions and billions of dollars of contracts just rolling over and over. Unthinkable amount of billions these people are running. That's a true story. I gave you the name of the guy. He's since passed away.
Well, and then also when they take their companies public and they're trading in stock. So, you know, a fun exercise to do was use Perplexity AI, this new artificial intelligence sort of search engine, and type in like Dan Crenshaw, you know, the congressman out of Texas. Ask what his net worth was when he went into Congress, and then ask what his net worth is now. And the man's a multimillionaire. Same with Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is now worth, six-figure, hundreds of millions of dollars. Lindsey Graham, when he first went to Congress, he was net worth was $800,000. Now it's between 42 and 82 million. You know, so the way it's Republican and Democrat alike, the man are feeding at the trough, and you know, part of that feeding at the trough is you start wars in places like Ukraine, where those people have to pay the price in terms of blood, but we don't care. You know, in this case, they're a bunch of white people, but man, if they're brown people or yellow people, we don't care. They're not really people as far as we're concerned. They're just a way to get paid.
Yeah, you know, I worked up on K Street, and when I did, let me tell you, on a pretty summer day, right? Any day, really. You walk out on K Street, you walk down the street, because all of those people are there, and they all, of course, have the women that work there. You think the Miss Universe contest test looks good. You walk out on K Street, you walk up and down that street, you see the most beautiful women you have ever seen in your life, just walking up and down the street. Where these places make unthinkable amounts of money, roll it over, and then they just hire the pretty girls to be out front or do nothing or just be there or whatever. You know what I mean? And you realize it's all just this big game. You know what I mean? It's just a huge game there. And it's interesting to see. And so I know, let me add this. I remember this from Fox. The other big game is all of these people, and you're like, oh, what do you do? I run a consulting firm. What is that? Well, if somebody's running for office, they call this person or that person. The party tells you say, I want to run for the office. The party says, okay, you're going to need certain contractors to set up stages, to set up this, to set up that. Here's a list of the ones we use. And you got to use the ones you're told to use. And you call them and you're like, I need a stage. They say that'll be 100,000. You're like, holy crap, I can get a stage for $10,000. Don't matter if you get it for 10,000. The party says you got to use me, and I chose. But out of that 100,000 people, it's just a big graft and corruption. The other thing is that and you know this, the people, these parties, the DNC and the RNC, when people are running for office, man, they are just slicing the pie. Somebody makes $1 billion to run for office. Oh my gosh, all kind of claws are into that money.
Yeah. Well, I was amused. One of these critics of the Russians was saying, "Oh, the problem with Putin is he's corrupt." And I just wrote him back. I said, "You know what? I don't want to hear another damn word out of any American talking about foreign corruption. We need to look in the mirror, clean up our own act. We're in no position to lecture anybody else about corruption. We're like the masters of it. We're just better at hiding it and keeping it, keeping it the appearance of being clean when it's dirty as can be."
You know, I think that a big fear. So the Trump people don't give a crap about Ukraine. They want out of it. They got a bigger fish to fry, right? I think one of the reasons that the Europeans, the Starmers of the world, and a lot of people, other people in the deep state are so scared is because they know in a corrupt place. Because look, when let me example, when Hunter Biden went to Burisma, Cofer Black, former CIA guy, went to Burisma on the board too. Biden's boy, Amos Hochstein. Amos Hochstein was working with the Obama administration. He quits his job. He goes to Ukraine. He gets on NAFTA gas on the board. That one of the fears, I think, with these deep state guys and these people that were involved in all this stuff is in Ukraine, a lot of these crooks and criminals and oligarchs, they got the goods on them.
Yeah.
And if the Russians come in, or even Trump's people, you know what they're going to say? Oh, we got you. They're going to say, wait a minute, before you take me or do whatever, lock me up, whatever, let's talk Turkey. I can give you this on Biden. I can give you this on MI6. You know what I mean? They got all kind of goods in Ukraine. Can you imagine? And you know damn well how corrupt people are. Corrupt people look out for the future, and they're going to keep insurance policies. And there's a whole lot of people in Ukraine that got insurance policies so that when this eventual day comes, they got tape, they got names, they got bank accounts, and they're going to be able to bail themselves out and hang some of these people. And I think the Europeans are scared. The EU people, the MI6, they're scared to death of that.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. There's, they're playing. There's a lot of skeletons in the closet. And we're seeing that here in the States too, with people eagerly awaiting the Epstein list to drop. And, even though those names have been out for years, Ryan Dawson did an excellent job of exposing all of it, just off of the court records. But, okay, they're going to come out and identify, this person, that person. But, up to this point, we've not had any accountability. Now, so, I've been accused of being a big Trump fan, and I'm not. But what Trump has done by coming in and sort of taking on the bureaucracy is, I've never seen it. I'm 70 years old. So, I've never seen anything like this. And, fully aware of, the corruption, like it's CIA and the DOD, man, they hide behind secrecy, as you pointed out earlier. So nobody ever has to, lift up that rock and look at all what scurries out from underneath it. But, it's about time they start trying to bring some accountability. We'll find out if Trump is just, big talker, not a doer, or if they're going to actually follow through on this.
I'll put it like this. I've come to this because there are people saying that to me. Either, oh, you're a Trump lover, or why are you so hard on Trump? Or you were right about this, or you were wrong about this. Sometimes I'm going to be right about things. Sometimes I'm going to be dead wrong about things. It is what it is. That's the nature of running your mouth. Sometimes you're going to get it right. Sometimes you're going to get it completely wrong. And I'm not ashamed. I'm going to throw out what I got to say. And if I'm completely wrong, I'll laugh about it. Oh, well, missed on that one. What the hell? It's like they asked Michael Jordan. They said, when you took your shot at the end of the game and you won so many games, what'd you think? What about the pressure? He said, there was no pressure. He says, I always thought I'm going to shoot the ball. Only one of two things can happen. Either it's going to go in or it ain't. Right? That's it. There ain't no pressure. Either it's going to happen.
Simple. Very simple.
Yeah. But when I look at it, and this is where I'm in politics, Trump's in there. There's things that Trump do, and I'm like, why the hell does that? That's the stupidest thing. I wish he wouldn't do that. Then there's other things that Trump does, and I just stand up and applaud, and I say, for God's sake, somebody finally did that for the first, you know what I mean? And I find myself not much in between. Either I'm jumping up and down saying hooray, or I'm beating him on the desk saying, what a bonehead, stupid. But you know what? For most administrations, all I do is beat on the desk. I never have a chance to jump up and say, hey. So I get it every now and then with the Trump administration. In between screaming and beating my head against the wall, every now and then I get to say, there we go. That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, some of the things like what he did the other day when he pointed that one woman who he had pardoned in his first administration and put her in sort of the pardon czar now, and she knows what it's like to be locked up. And, in fact, she had the good grace to say, hey, look, I did wrong and I got punished. But, but Trump saw that I had turned my life around and that people can go into prison and come out better. And so, hey, what better to have somebody who's been through that in charge? So okay, that's good. Now, on the other hand, trying to make a deal with Zelensky for rare earth minerals. Oh, come on. Somebody's buying a Brooklyn Bridge in this. It's just a question of who.
I don't know what that's about. Let me ask you this. So I'm going to ask your opinion, because I have people ask me all the time, what's going to happen? Are they going to get a deal or not? Are they going to walk away? And I'm like, and my opinion is, number one, the Trump administration really don't care about Ukraine that much. I mean, they just assume I think they want to talk with the Russians about, mining and rare earth minerals and gas and oil and things like that where they can make money, right? That's all they care about. And they would just as soon sign something, give it to the Russians, say, take this Nazi-infested crap hole off of our back once and for all so we can move on. But anyway, your thoughts on the likelihood of some kind of deal coming, or do they just keep working along, talking, meeting back and forth while the Russians continue to bash Ukraine to pieces? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter. Russia is going to continue to bash Ukraine, and it's a question of whether the negotiations will even get started before Ukraine collapses. So the first step is that what they agreed on a week ago is to create a working group on Ukraine, and that working group will then meet to sort it out. Well, the Russian position on it is real clear, and the United States has refused to really accept Russia's position. And Russia's position is this: they're not going to have any negotiations with Ukraine until Ukraine's troops are out of the 4 oblasts. They've got to withdraw from Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk. Withdrawal. They've got to change the government. They can't have this neo-Nazi government headed up by Zelensky. That's got to change before the Russians talk to them about peace. They've got to agree that they're not going to become part of NATO. And that they're not going to let these foreign troops come in. So Russia's laid out a number of conditions that are not negotiable. That's what the West doesn't understand. They think Trump thinks, oh yeah, Putin's going to have to make some concessions. No, he's not. Well, what leverage do you got? Your name may be Trump, but you're not holding Trump cards. Okay.
Well, the thing about it too is, I say this. In a way, okay, the question is this: who does Trump need leverage with? He doesn't really need leverage with the Russians, because the truth is, he don't really give a crap about Ukraine. I mean, he hates Zelensky for obvious reasons. They tried to sue him. They were involved in Russiagate. They did everything they could to stick a knife in his back, front, side, and everything else. So he just as soon get rid of them. The only people, so he don't really need I don't think he's overly concerned about what's in the final deal. If he can get a few dimes out of it, in a way, sometimes I think this whole minerals deal, part of it is putting the pressure, keeping the pressure on Zelensky and his people, keeping them down, keeping them upset, keeping them just keep the pressure. But I think part of it too is he needs pressure, or his leverage that he would use would be on the Europeans, because the time is going to come when Trump is going to have to put his foot down with the Europeans and say, this is what I've decided. The Russians are here. We're there, whatever. This is the way we got to go. And the longer he drags it out, the more the closer the Ukraine military and the Ukraine political, the Ukraine regime, the closer they get to collapse, the more leverage he has with the Europeans to say, you got to do this. Or we don't want to. Well, they've collapsed. Well, they've lost everything. Well, they're losing everything. And then, because I don't think he really wants to stomp them into the ground and threaten to cut off everything. He will if he has to. But I think his leverage that he'll use is not with the Russians, because he wants to deal with it. Well, if you look at the Russians, there's 3 big countries. There's the U.S., there's the Russians, there's China. We're the only ones that matter. What talk to the Europeans? They're not even Chihuahua. They don't even exist. They're falling apart. Their people, the leaders that they hate, are all losing. Their own people hate their guts. They're at war with the whole world. Says the global South, the Chinese, the Russians, the Americans all say, we are all be better off if we get a peace deal. The only people that don't want a peace deal in the entire world is these so-called leaders, and their own people hate their guts. They have to oppress and suppress and censor their own people. They're like the most isolated people on earth.
No, absolutely. And then on top of it, there's no political consensus across the board in Europe. So the Labour Party, it won a significant majority vote in the last election, but now it's polling well into the low 30s, if not lower. So they no longer have a 50+% mandate. We saw in Germany, everybody's excited about the Alternative for Deutschland, the AfD, AfD. Oh my God, they got 21% of the vote. And I was saying, Yeah, good for them. They doubled from 10 to 21%. And you know what? They're still 21%. They're a fifth. They represent a fifth of the German population, maybe. So there's no one majority position. And that's what you're seeing is this fragmentation of the politics. Now, up to this point, what Trump had going for him this time was he got a clear majority. And it was no argument about that. And so that gives him some freedom to act that Europe doesn't. Listen, the European Union can talk and talk and talk, but they are like the old big bad wolf from the Three Little Pigs story. They're huffing, they're puffing, threatening to blow down the house, and Russia's living in a brick house.
Yeah, that's the other part of it, because if you look at you've got three entities in here. You've got the European Union, Russia, and the US. Trump won in a blowout. He got constituencies that he'd never, ever gotten before. No Republican ever got some of the constituencies that he got. It was clear that the Democrats had just collapsed and everybody was like, we're sick of these people. They're out of their minds. So they're done, right? Yeah. Putin wins 86 to 87%. The people there love Vladimir Putin. If you look at the history, where were they when he came in and where are they now? He's like the FDR of Russia. You know, FDR had to die to get out. The only way he could get out of office is to die. And Putin right now, they love him, and that's great for him. So you got three entities. One of them, the guy just won in a blowout. The other one, the guy won before him in a blowout. And then you've got a broken fragment of a mess with Ursula von der Leyen. They're losing. They've got to arrest people that are running for office. They're having some pro-Kiev rally in Berlin with a bunch of neo-Nazis. I mean, I don't know what the hell's going on. So how can they even think? Well, it makes sense to me, though. They're so dysfunctional. Yeah. That they're not, they've lost the ability to think rationally, I think. But I think they're dangerous. They could do something stupid. They could try to blow up a Russian ship or do something really, really stupid and dangerous because they're so irrational, Larry.
Well, the other thing that's saving us is that they really lack a lot of technical competence and skill. And they certainly are really deficient in military capability. So that's the saving grace. Again, they remind, you know, if you've ever seen any 5-6-year-old kids, they dress up cowboy, Indian, military. They're play acting. That's all Europe is doing anymore. They're like children who are play acting. You know, because when it comes time to actually having to deliver and do something, forget about it.
I tell you what they remind me of, and you know, I'm an older guy. You'll remember back in these. I tell people, my dad was old school longshoreman, right? Tough guy on the, hard hat guy, and worked on the water, and always had a pickup truck, right? When I was a little kid, you probably remember these things. They had these little plastic steering wheels for the kids.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I had a little one, and my ride in a pickup truck with my dad, and he turned right, I turned the wheel right. Mine had a little plastic, you put batteries in it. It had the little blinkers that come on left. He's driving, I look, he turns right, I turn right. He turns his blinker on, I turn, he's shifting, I move my little shifter around. That's Europe. And Trump's turning right. Europe, they think they're turning it right when they turn their little plastic steering wheel. They think they're turning left. They're not having any control over the machine. They got a plastic steering wheel. The US and Russia, we got real trucks. They turn left and right. All they got is a plastic steering wheel, and they're fooling themselves into thinking that they're actually involved in the decision-making process.
Yeah, they want to level more sanctions on Russia as an example. And Russia's fine, because the last time they did that, Russia got wealthy and Europe got poor. Just they don't understand economics in Europe anymore.
I think that one of the things that that the Trump people could do, and I think they're looking to do it, to be honest, to really put the pressure on the Europeans. At some point, they really got to put the pressure on them and wake them up. And I think dropping a bunch of sanctions. I think when the U.S. starts to drop sanctions, the Europe, in a way, because of their rhetoric, they can't drop them because their rhetoric is so over the top. But by the same token, what that'll do is their companies will start saying, hey, whoa. Coca-Cola and these other companies are going back in, and our sanctions say Americans are going to be like, oh no, you don't have to drop sanctions. You just stay right over there. We're going to go into this prime market here and do all the business we can. We suggest that you keep the sanctions on for all eternity. It'll open up markets and business and everything else. And I think the pressure from the corporations in Europe will start to be irresistible, shall we say. What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, no, I think they're definitely headed in that direction. The problem is they've sort of they have done so much damage to themselves by their sanctions regime. So you go back 4 years ago and you went to Moscow, you'd see a lot of BMWs, a lot of Mercedes-Benz, a lot of Audis, even some Volkswagens. Now those are disappearing. People are buying Chinese automobiles. Chinese are making some really nice cars with a lot of great features, and the people of Russia like them. Plus, they're much more inexpensive. They're not cheap in terms of lacking in quality, but in terms of the price makes it good for the Russian people too. So now the Europeans want to come back in with that. Russians are going, we don't need what you have now. There's not the demand there for it. Same thing happened to Siemens on their diesel engines and other equipment, machinery that they were selling to Russia and that Russia used to rely upon. With the imposition of sanctions, Russia had to turn to an alternative and realized, hey, we can build that. We can do that ourselves. So they started building the very machines they used to buy from Siemens. And all of a sudden, Siemens is like, oh, well, hey, can we come back in? And the Russians are going, no, forget about it. We don't need you anymore. What good are you?
You know, I also think a lot of Russian companies now, if you make something in Russia, whatever it is, right? You make cookies, chocolate chip cookies. Okay, Chips Ahoy or whoever was selling X amount, and let's say you had 10% of the market. Chips Ahoy and Oreo, they all leave. Now you got 100% of the market. You're making money. Well, when it comes time to open things back up, I would think that those companies would say to their government, hold it, hold it, hold it. These are Russian companies making Russian money, and it's staying here in Russia. Why should we? I would think that some of the Russian companies are going to start pushing back to their government saying, hey, let's not be so quick to let these other companies come in, because if they make money, they're going to take it back west. If we make money, it stays here. And guess what? Our factories are all here, and our people and our bank accounts are all here. How does it benefit Russia to allow some of these companies to come in when they got people that are making good quality stuff and the people of Russia are happy with it?
Well, with some of the food stuff, like particularly the American junk food, that never went away in Russia. They were still, when I was there, man, they were still selling Mars bars, Snickers, Hershey's. You know, you get and Coca-Cola and Pepsi. I mean, it's still for sale. But other consumer items that are, you know, shoes, clothing, you know, electronic items. The United States is no longer. Russia has awakened and said we don't need the West. We can take care of this ourselves, or we'll find it in the global South. Now, what's really fascinating is the number. Listen, there's a large number of people in the CIA and the Department of Defense, Pentagon, in the Trump administration, and academia up on Wall Street. They all believe that we can pull off a reverse Nixon. Not nothing that you did, but you know what I mean. That we can go in with Russia, get cozy with Russia, and split them off from China, because China's bad, and Russia will go along with. Yeah, I keep telling myself, folks, I don't know what you're smoking, but it's probably illegal, and you ought to stop it, because that ain't gonna happen. Russia ain't walking away from China. China ain't walking away from Russia. They both realize, you know, we either hang together or we're going to hang separately, because these folks in Washington, D.C. want to string us up.
Well, you know, and if you're Russia and China, you think to yourself, if you're Russia, you think, well, they said they were going to go after us first, and then they were going to get China, right? But if all they're going to do is reverse it, they're going to go after China first, and then they're going to get us. Either way, you're still on the menu. Are you the main course, or are you dessert? It don't matter. The other thing is this, because China was a good economic backstop for them, right? They built like the power of Siberia, the power of Siberia too. They're building these gigantic pipelines and stuff, right? And China and Russia's got to look at it and say, you know what? If the U.S. were to try to blockade China from getting stuff over the seas, they have one of the longest borders in the world. So China can still get all the things they need across the Russian border. They're building bridges, they're building trains. Sooner or later, they're going to have high-speed trains that are going to be able to deliver, goods and services, not just people. So if you're Russia and China, you have to look at that and say, in the long run, from a national security perspective, we got a hard border. No submarines can block our border. From the security perspective of both countries, it benefits both of them to integrate their supply chains, especially since one of them selling stuff and the other need to buy what they're selling.
Yeah. No, it's Russia. What give credit? Let's give Joe Biden full credit, man. He brought Russia and Iran closer together. He brought China and Iran closer together, and he brought Russia and China closer together. The man probably ought to get the Nobel Peace Prize for at least bringing those three countries where they're like, they're in a good title relationship now.
He brought North Korea in too. Think about that. Russia and North Korea side of that. This man is monumental. He changed the world. I think that here's the other thing. I think maybe I'm wrong. This is my guess, Larry. The pivot to China. I remember hearing J.D. Vance talk about China, and he said they're 7,000 miles away. They got all these ships and missiles. And J.D. Vance said we couldn't go to war with them. There's no way we'd win that, right?
Right.
So like true. What people are saying is, you hear people, well, Trump just wants to stop that so he can go to war with China. I don't think the Trump administration wants war with China. I think the Trump administration, their quote, pivot to focus to China is, let's get some kind of an economic deal with Russia. And then we'll figure out some kind of deal, treaty, some way to deal with China. I don't think they're stupid enough. I don't think Trump will be honest with it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think Donald Trump wants war with Iran. I don't think he wants war with China. I don't think Donald Trump really wants a war. Now, there's neocons around that do, but I don't really think, and that's not that I like him or don't like him. My evaluation, it doesn't seem to me that Donald Trump wants to go to war with anybody.
Well, what they need to think about is we couldn't even beat the Houthis. Okay. We sent over aircraft carriers with destroyers and cruisers. We sent in planes. We were bombing the living daylights out of them. And at the end of the day, we had to pull our aircraft carriers out until, they once the ceasefire was negotiated, they said, okay, we'll declare a ceasefire too. But if that thing ramps back up, the United States is not if we can't defeat the Houthis and we think we're going to take on China, oh, come on. That it's just, we're in fantasy dreamland when it comes to that.
Yeah. And I just don't think the Trump people are in that fantasy dreamland.
Yeah.
I think that the Trump people, the people who have power, when I see the Elon Musk and the Bezos and Tim Cooks and all of those people, I call them the board of directors. I say, that's the real board of directors right there. That's the people with the real money that call shots. And I look at them and I think they got factories, all of them, Apple, all of them got factories in China. Their whole supply chain is in China. U.S. goes to war with China. Bezos is out of business. Tesla's out of business. Cook's out of business. They're all out of business overnight if we go to war with China. Out of business. All of their assets are gone, their supply chains, their factories, everything. We would literally be bombing their factories. They don't want those people have a lot of power. They're like $1 trillion between 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, we've got this obsession with claiming we want to stop the Chinese from empire building, except it's quick to remind folks, China doesn't have hundreds of military bases overseas like the United States. China is basically staying at home and minding its business around its borders. And it just looks to me that that'd be a great lesson for us to learn. We should try it. Keep our damn hands to ourselves. Stop meddling with other people.
Let me ask you this too. Something we started off with, so we're getting towards the end here. one of the things that we started off with was talking about, the U.S. history of abusing countries and puppet leaders, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you're Taiwan, you're South Korea, you're the Philippines, you're Japan, and you're watching this shit show, you got to say to yourself, that's my future. What about the countries that we've been trying to use as puppets against China? Clearly, the Philippines, the poverty there is unbelievable. And they're going to be a great military to throw up against the wall to fight China. But your thoughts on what these countries got to be looking over at this mess, saying, uh-oh, that's what they want to use us for next.
Well, and that's where BRICS comes in. Now, Trump, unlike Biden, has recognized that BRICS is a real threat. And that's why he's been making, warning to impose sanctions on BRICS countries. But BRICS ain't going away. And the combination of Russia, India, China, South Africa, and Brazil.
Was it Indonesia? Indonesia just joined, didn't they?
Indonesia signed on. Iran has signed on. There are Vietnam has signed on.
Like that? I think Algeria.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
So it's these other countries are recognizing. We may like the United States in some things, but we don't want to be in that relationship. It's like an abusive relationship with a spouse that beats up the other. We gotta insulate ourselves. We gotta get a restraining order. Keep the United States in its corner so we can go out and develop ourselves. And that's, frankly, that's what you've seen taking place in Africa. They're throwing off the remnants of colonial control, moving to establish their independence and making sure that those countries profit from the minerals that the Europeans used to take out. And that's why when you compare Russia and China side by side, Russia's number one in the world in terms of natural resources, and Ukraine was number 5. Yet Ukraine was the poorest country in Europe. What was the difference? The difference was in July of 2000, Putin called all the oligarchs in for what was called a barbecue. And he basically read them the riot act, said, hey, you're going to stop stealing the money, stop sending it overseas, you're going to invest it here in Russia, and you're going to stay out of politics. If not, I'm going to put you in jail. Oh, that's a dictator. You know what? Look at the results. Russia is now the 4th largest economy in the world. If you've been to Moscow, it surpassed Paris as the city of lights. It's beautiful. It's clean. It's safe. You got great restaurants. The stores are full. And how has he done that? Because he hasn't had Russia out paying trillions of dollars in stupid, meaningless wars.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that we see the countries that use their money for their own. And let me add this: something else that those meaningless wars brings that Europe has to deal with, and that's the whole immigrant issue. The immigrant issue, in my opinion, is this: you go out. Number one, I make this country a colonial country of mine. Well, those people are, quote, subjects to the crown. So they can come here anytime they want. So if that's a poor country and I took this country, I'm gonna get all the resources. A lot of the poor people there are going to go, well, I'm subject to the crown. I don't need a visa. I'm coming back to France or wherever the hell country that is. Great. Yeah. So they all come back. Then I destabilize Afghanistan. Well, I got all these Afghans. They're coming back. Then I attack Syria. So their foreign policy has created this funnel of people, either that a country they colonized or a region they destabilize, and you create these funnels of immigrants that are all coming over. Well, when Russia and China wasn't going around doing that, they didn't have a funnel of immigrants coming. So the culture was stable. It's a Russian culture. It's stable. You got cultural instability throughout Europe, but they don't want to admit their foreign policy created the economic and cultural instability. China, same thing.
Yeah. Maybe it's God's way of punishing them for all their abuses as colonial powers.
Yeah, exactly. The chicken's coming home to roost. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah,
it really
is.
Yep. Well, thanks a lot, Larry Johnson. Don't forget, everybody, go to sonar21.com. That's Larry's great website. He writes really great stuff. He puts links to a lot of the stuff that he does there. Larry, where can people find, follow you on X or wherever, or Telegram or wherever?
Yeah, I've got all the links in the side column at Sonar 21. So just click there, and you can, if you haven't had enough of me already, then you can go get some more.
Always, there we go. One of the things I always like to do is let people see the website. There you go. That's it.
Yeah.
That's Sonar 21. And you can see Trump reigns in there. You can support. You can click on here. You can support. Look at that. You got PayPal, PayShoot, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee. You can look at Larry's latest stuff going on. You can find out all about Larry. There you go. So there's lots going on here. Go to Sonar 21. All kinds of various links, all kinds of stuff he's working on. It's a great website. So there you go. That's it. Sonar21.com. Feel free to go there anytime you want to and keep up with all the good work that Larry's doing. Thanks, Larry. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come on my channel.
All right, brother. I appreciate it, man.
All right, everybody. We're going to make a run for it. Hey, don't forget, share this on all your social media platforms. As you all probably know, a lot of people in the chat have asked a question. Last night, I did a show with Andre Martianoff and Scott Ritter, and everybody got off this morning and said, "Hey, where's the show?" Well, I got an email. I still don't know why, from YouTube that said, due to misinformation, this video has been removed from YouTube. And I sent it back, and they just said misinformation. They would never tell me what the hell did Scott and Andre say. Who knows? I guess somebody didn't like it. But here's the deal. I also did it on Rumble. So go right over to Rumble, and you go to my Rumble channel. Everything that I do is also on Rumble and Rockfin. So if you see something here and they take it down on YouTube, boom, it's going to be on Rumble. Go over there. And while you're there, subscribe, just in case one day they get really pissed and decide I'm not on YouTube anymore. Thanks a lot, everybody. We're out.